Hi, this is Raymond Rose. Thanks for joining me today. I've got 3 stories that I want to share with you that happened to me a number of years ago that totally changed my life along with the people that I care most about. Please stay with me. I've got 3 stories to share with you. I'll guarantee you that at the very end, you're going to rethink a lot of different parts of your life and start being a little bit more aware of the words that come out of your mouth. So if you've listened to my podcast before, you may know. If you haven't listened, well, my background is in supermarket management. I had a wonderful job with one of the major supermarket chains in this country. And part of my job was to go from store to store and walk different departments with different people, with the different department managers, and discuss with them what they were doing right in their department, where they could improve a little bit. And one day, as I'm walking along the front end of a store, where the cash registers are, I noticed that there were some little pieces of paper on the floor, some receipts, some dust in the corners, and the like. And I called over the service clerk. His name was David, 17-year-old boy that, does bagging, gets the carriages in the parking lot. And I said to David, go get the dust mop and sweep up this whole area in the front end. I don't want to see all these little pieces of paper and dust on the floor, so please sweep it up. So he's like, sure, Mr. Rose, I'll do it right away. And then I finished walking the store and I came back to the front end, and right there was a pile of all the little papers and dust and the little receipts and stuff. So I called David over and I said, Dave, what are you doing here? Are you going to pick this stuff up? And he said, oh, Mr. Rose, you want me to pick it up? Because you specifically told me to sweep it up. I was wondering why you didn't tell me to pick it up. So Mr. Rose, I did exactly what you told me to do. I swept it up. And I said, well, Dave, no, I want you to pick it up too. So sure enough, David goes on. So the department manager that I'm standing there with says to me, oh my goodness, common sense says to pick it up. And I said to the department manager, it's like, you know what? I said, you know what? I just learned a lesson from this 17-year-old kid. I wasn't specific. There's no doubt in my mind that David wanted to do exactly what I told him to do, and I shouldn't assume that he was going to pick it up. So the manager said back to me, he says, well, common sense says, of course you want to pick it up. And I said to the department manager, well, common sense means different things to different people. I mean, common sense says don't overeat and stay healthy. Common sense says exercise every day. Common sense says don't drive drunk. Common sense says don't smoke cigarettes. Common sense means different things to different people, I said to the store manager. So at the end of the day, I said to myself, geez, you know what? He's right. I wasn't specific, and I need to be more specific and more thoughtful with the words that come out of my mouth, especially in my particular position. Okay, so that was that day, and several weeks went by, and I'm home now, and I said to my wife, one evening I said, hey, what's up for dinner? What are we having? So she came back and said, I don't remember exactly what she said. Maybe she said hamburgers or whatever. So then I waited 3 or 4 seconds and I said, well, are you going to tell me when we're going to eat? And she said, well, you didn't ask me when we were going to eat. You asked me, what are we having for dinner? And I responded. She said, if you wanted me to tell you what time we were going to eat, you should have asked me that question. And sure enough, a little bell went off. And I reflected back to the day when I was at the supermarket with the service clerk, David, and I said, that's twice now that I asked specific questions and I didn't get the response that I expected because I wasn't specific with my words. And at that point, years ago, I said, I need to be super focused on the words that come out of my mouth. Because as life went on, I noticed so many instances in my career, in my personal life, with my kids, with my friends, where there were always little disagreements or misunderstandings. And it always came back as I was the third person. As I listened, it'd be like, well, wait a minute. That person didn't ask, person number 1 didn't ask person number 2 specifically what they wanted to hear. So then there was little words back and forth and maybe a spat between a husband and a wife or with the kids or whatever. It was very clear to me that people weren't being very specific. So fast forward a few years, and here's my third story. I was in a health food store that I frequent regularly. And at the front end of the store, there was a gentleman there that I knew him. His name was Andrew. He was about a 40-year-old man, very well kept. you could tell that he was in excellent shape. And I said to him one day, I said, "Hey, Andrew, where do you keep the organic eggs in this store?" And he said, "Go down aisle 4, go to the very end of the aisle. Once you get there, take a left, take a right at the second aisle that you come to, go to the end of that aisle. You'll see a refrigerated case. It's the third refrigerated case to the left. The organic eggs are on the bottom shelf." And I said to him right there, I said, "I've been in the industry, the supermarket industry, for many, many years. I've never heard anybody give such specific instructions as you just gave me." I said, "That was wonderful." I said, "I know exactly where to go." And he said to me, "Well, I'm a retired Army Ranger." And I'm not sure if you, the listener, know what an Army Ranger is. It's like being a Green Beret or being a Navy SEAL, but for the U.S. Army. He says, I'm a retired Army Ranger. The number one thing they taught us and they talked about all the time is how important it is to be specific with every single word that comes out of our mouth. Make sure that everything is well thought out. He says, because if I'm working with my fellow Army Rangers and maybe we're on a mission, I need to make sure that I'm communicating flawlessly with exactly what I want my other fellow Rangers to do or what I see. Because if I misdirect them or if my words are not detailed and concise, it could cost harm to my fellow Army Rangers. So we were taught always be concise, detailed, and specific with everything that comes out of our mouth, everything we write, because that's how you become truly effective in your thoughts and in your words. So those 3 things happened to me, like I said, many years ago, and it totally changed my life. And even now, I think about the different words that come out of my mouth. And one of the tricks I learned, that making sure that when I am specific when I'm talking to different people, that I make sure that I sometimes I'll even come back and say, like if I'm talking to my grandchildren, and I'll say something to them, and then I'll say, "Hey, repeat back to me what you understood me to say." And then when they repeat back to me, it's like, you know what? That's my point did not get across. I can't blame them because I always have to understand who is my audience. Remember what I said at the beginning. You would say, "Oh, common sense says, whatever." Well, I need to understand who my audience is. Who am I speaking to? And making sure that just because I said something, it doesn't mean that they necessarily understood it. So that's for my story for today. Please give it some serious thought. Watch your words as you move forward. Give some thought to, how you're communicating with your family members, with your coworkers, even how you're talking to yourself with self-talk and making sure that you're focused on your priorities. So that's it for today. Like I said, I knew this was going to be a little bit of a long podcast, but I'm hoping you got some really good value out of it. Thank you for listening. I want to remind you that I do make a podcast every single day regarding one of 4 areas: your health, your time, your money, or your habits. Every podcast is just a few minutes long. It's always got valuable information. I get to the point. I won't waste your time. So if you would please consider doing these few things for me. Number 1, subscribing to my channel by hitting the little black button on your screen. Number 2, give me a thumbs up by tapping the link on the like link on your screen. Number 3, consider sharing this podcast with your family, friends, and coworkers. And number 4, scroll through my other podcasts that I've got on file. I think there's some really fun and useful topics. So that's it for today. Again, I appreciate your support. Thanks for staying with me during this longer podcast. I'll talk to you tomorrow.